Hey everyone, Paul ISM. Welcome to the start of probably one of the biggest projects I've ever done on the channel. So yes, if you've watched previous updates, you've already seen kind of a look through the box of this. So it's Tamiya's 124 Ferrari FXXK, which is basically the LaFerrari on steroids. Now, this was a very kind gift from a friend of mine, Dan, so thank you, Dan, for this very much. This comes with the Tamiya kit. It's got the Tamiya carbon fibre set. It's got a full hobby design detail up set, which is full of photo etch, resin. I'll put some pictures up on the screen as I'm talking about it. There's resin in there, resin wheels, resin parts, loads of photo etch, and we've got a full carbon fibre set from Tamiya as well, and a different decal set to make yellow car number 15. So, a lot of work involved in this one. This is going to be a project I'm going to pick up and put down every now and then. So you're going to get one or two parts at a go, then I'll build something else and come back. Because it's quite a big project, I kind of want to space it out. For one, the plastic kit is probably one of the biggest projects I've done. There's a lot of extras in this, and I had to sit and figure out how I was going to build this. And as I'm going to tell you in a second, I'm going to have to go by the book, literally, and go and build all the, rather than skipping right to the bodywork first. I want to get all that interior, all the monocoque on, so I can test out all the body panels before I commit to any paint. So there we go. So let's get started with this build, and let's have a look at all the instruction sheets we've got to deal with. Right then, the start of this epic project. So we've got a set of kit instructions to look at. We've got a carbon fibre decal set instructions to look at, a photo etch set of instructions to look at, and some aftermarket decals to look at. So we need to cross-reference all these while we're building, including all these resin parts, photo etch. Yes, there's a lot to do in this kit. Figuring out the build plan was not my typical way. Having a look through everything with the carbon fibre. Everything is in kind of build order with the carbon fibre. The steps are all listed. So I figured the best way to do it was go through the instruction order, which is not the way I usually work. But I think for the sake of my own mind and sanity, it was probably the best way. So we've got a lot to work on, a lot to cross-reference. We've got to pray with our little fingers, measure a box, dab our finger, and give the Fonzie 2 thumbs up. And there we go. So, first off, we've got the chassis cut off and some very, very delicate suspension arms to clean up. So, take your time here. I've got some ultimate polishing, sanders and buffers here, clean everything up, get rid of all the sprue points, any seam lines around the body. Now, because we've got a lot to get through, I'm not going to hang around on all the simple stuff that we do in every single build. You all know how to remove seam lines, clean sprue points up. Well, most of you will. If you don't, go back and look at some of my other videos like the Subaru build from a few years back. This is just basic part cleanup that we're going to do to every single part, removing the sprue points, dabbing off our hands, and cleaning up all the parts. As you can see, start with step 1. We're onto the chassis, along with the engine, exhaust, suspension, brakes, and that's where we're going to get to today. We're going to get the main section of the chassis built up in parts 1 and 2. So starting off, we've got this cleaned off part. It's held on a bulldog clip. We've got some Mr. Servicer 1500 black, my Iwata Revolution CR3, at about 18 psi. I'm going to put a couple of coats down of primer. So I like the Mr. Servicer 1500. It dries quick. It's a good lacquer-based primer. It dries to a nice kind of semi-gloss satin black colour, and it self-levels out nicely. Dries really quick, sprays really nice through the airbrush, and obviously being a lacquer cleans up really well as well. So this is the main component we're going to deal with first. There's a lot of carbon fibre to go on this, so I literally left it in the Mr. Servicer 1500 black. Perfect colour, didn't need anything else. Now we've got all our carbon sheets I showed you before. We've got a massive sheet of that. It's all pre-cut, so it's a case of cutting it off, getting it in place, removing all the water, hitting with some ultimate decal solutions, burnishing it down, chucking the chassis on the bench, and getting everything laid down. So using a combination of the decal solutions, you can see our decal sheet there, quite a lot of carbon. Using a combination of decal solutions and our heat gun to get all the decals in place. So lots to get through. So number one, first lesson, I'm using a cutting mat. Make sure that cutting mat has no wet spots on from a previous decal, which is why I've got kitchen paper at the top. Otherwise you'll literally soak into your decals that you're probably not going to use for several stages yet. And that's definitely what we don't want to do. So using a nice sharp knife, we're going to cut out both these side pieces. They're identical, just mirrored, and they're going to go either side of the chassis. Now, again, we've got lots of carbon pieces. I reckon there was about 20 separate carbon pieces just on the interior of this cockpit. And obviously, we can't sit here and look at every single one. And I actually don't think you'd want to sit and watch every single one. Unfortunately, because we're on a black chassis, I'm chucking that chassis around again. Because we're on a black chassis, it's quite hard to see the carbon. But it is pre-cut. It all fitted in really well. No issues at all. I have scanned the carbon sheet, so if I muck one up, which we do later on, funnily enough, we can just cut out the shape from the spare bit of carbon on the decal sheet and replace it. So a good idea to always scan decals like this. And you never know, you might have a friend down the line who builds the kit. You can send them the scan and they can cut out their own carbon then. It's a Tamiya carbon, which looks to be exactly the same as the decal sheets that they sell of carbon. Always lays down really well, responds well to the ultimate strong solution and a bit of heat. And like I say, it's a case of just going around the entire chassis and carbon fibre and all. A lot of pieces, so take your time here, make sure it's all in the right position, use your instructions, make sure you're using the kit instructions as well to cross-reference any other parts. And then just get them set in place, burnished down. And a little bit of heat behind them always helps to get them settled in place. These heat guns from Amazon are cheap. They're about 12 to 15 pounds. Plenty of heat in them, so be careful you don't melt any plastic. And don't heat the decal too much as it'll bubble up. Just enough, and you'll find it helps it conform around all the corners. You can use your finger, which is one of the best decaling tools you can have. Just to roll over the edges gently. And there we go. So there's some of the major parts in place. Like I say, there is loads of carbon to this interior, so we're not going to sit and look at every single bit. I'm just going to show some of the more prominent pieces going in. Like I say, I reckon there's about 20 decals on this. There's quite a lot. So just be careful, take your time, and you'll be just good. There we go. As you see, using our water pen with the decal solutions, the cotton bud, once it's softened in place, just be gentle with the cotton bud, and you can burnish it down, get rid of any air from behind it or any water, moisture, and then the heat again just helps soften the decal and get it in place. So just take your time here. A little bit of gentle heat really makes a difference on the decals. You can use a hairdryer, but the hairdryer's got a lot more power to it, so you end up blowing everything on your bench. These kind of purpose-made heat guns are much more suitable for the job. So there's a couple of little pieces for the back end as well, where we just need to conform it around the tub a little bit. So get that in place, hit it with the decal solutions and a bit of heat again. Like I say, I'm not going to show every single one because we'd be here all day. Instructions are nice and clear. The only two I had a problem with were behind the driver's seat because I couldn't figure out where these two go, the ones I'm heating up now. The instructions show it like it goes at the bottom, and I was thinking, why is it going at the bottom? Then I realised it's at the top. It's just the way the picture is because the seats are going to block where all that goes. So there we go. So a godsend, the carbon fibre, although you're not really going to see much of this when the chassis is all together. We know it's in there, and it'll make an interesting video when we see it all together. Now, it does drive a nice satin sheen as well, so we shouldn't need to do anything gloss coat wise with it. So we can just leave it be. Center console pieces as well. It's starting to look good. Sadly, because it's black, it's quite hard to see, but it's just one of those things. Now, first, the photo etch part, we've got to get rid of the plastic cooling fans off the front of this. I think it's a radiator. It is a radiator. And we need to build our own photo etch one. So I tried cut most off with the razor saw, which it did to a degree. And then I got a 100 180 UMP white sander. Very aggressive sander. to completely take it back to bare plastic. Now it does leave the indentation of the plastic fans in there, but as long as it's smooth, I'm happy. So, like I said, we've got photo etch fans, which again are probably about another 15 components to build up. I'm going to show building one of them, and then we'll do the other one off camera. So, clean up all the seams as well, the seams all around the edge, getting this part nice and clean. So, like I say, I don't normally go in this kind of order through the instructions, but with this one, we've just got no choice. There's just too much to look at. I kind of get waylaid trying to figure out where I am with things. So if we just go through the order process, I think it'll make life easier. So lots of photo etch parts for these fans. We clean them up with our Zoron PE shears. Absolutely fantastic, these things. I've had them for years. And I'll be honest, if you can get close enough to the actual PE part, once you snip it off, there's nothing left to clean up. They cut that cleanly. They are absolutely fantastic. Anything that does leave a bit of a mark, we've got our Tamiya diamond file to deal with. So, follow the instructions for the fans. We've got a little bit of PE that kind of sits in the middle here. This piece, it's like a spacer. So, we'll put a little bit of Bob Smith super glue on there. And then we'll pop our spacer in place. And a little bit more glue on top. We can pop our second piece in. Just spreading the glue out a little bit so we get a bit more purchase on the part. So, not even pretend to know what these parts are. All I know is it needs to clean up a bit more. There we go. And we're just following the instructions. Now, there's some very awkward rivets to put in this as well. Very, very small, but they add detail to it. Sadly, this part's not another one. Well, it is another one that's going to be barely seen. But it's part of the build process. Comes with the kit. And to be fair, they do look really good. So, the holes are pre-drilled in the photo etch. You get the Burr My Head appearing in shot. This was quite a delicate procedure. So I put a little dab of super glue in the hole. This is the top upturned part of it. We've got the little tiny rivet. We just pop it in the hole, pushing it through, making sure it's straight because we need this to line up later with another part. There's all the rivets. They are absolutely minute. I've zoomed in a little bit so you can see. And then just through the hole, get the shea glue on there. There's 2 of them. There's 4 in total on each one of the fans. A little bit of super glue. Again, another one of the spacers. Just make sure it centralizes. A little hole through the middle. So if you pop your tweezers into the hole, it'll kind of self-center the part for you. And then we've got the fan itself. Now all these need bending. Now, I bent both of them the same way. I'm assuming that's right. You'll see we've got a left and a right fan. So just use my tweezers to gently bend the veins. And look at which way I want it orientated. It then sits on top of one of those spacers we popped in earlier on. So a little dab of super glue. We can get that in place. So I opted on this to pop it onto the actual plastic part to check the fit. Then pop it in place. We've got all our rivets in place as well. Apologies for the out of focus shot. There we go. And then we need to line the whole thing up with the 4 rivets into holes in the fan. So we need to drill these out, which we're going to do in a second, using the smallest drill bit I could find. So just popping the rivets through properly. And putting these 2 parts together, making sure all the glue grabs everywhere we can. Now what I did find helpful on some of the parts that are a bit more difficult to glue is to run it around the outer edge, then wipe off the excess with acetone. Now we've got the markings for the screw holes. Luckily it's kind of where the original ones were. You can see the indentation in the plastic still. So using a PC board drill bit, which I'm not a big fan of using, we can drill those out and glue them both in and they look absolutely fantastic. A vast improvement over the kit ones. We primed that up in Mr. Service 1500 black again, and we've got a couple of carbon decals to go on here as well. So again, UMP strong decal solution, just gently work it until we get it in place. There we we go. Absolutely brilliant. And a little bit of heat. Get all that set in place. Like I say, it's a shame you're barely going to see these. I think you'll see them through the front scoop at the front. Well, that would be at the front, wouldn't it, if it was at the front. The front scoop in the bonnet. Like I say, it's a part of the kit and you'll get to see it as well. But there we go. First major part of carboning and PE done. Now onto the engine. We need to cut this off because we've got a resin replacement. We've also got a load of wiring to do as well, which we're not going to do in this session. We'll do that next time. So I've got my JLC razor saw. I'm just gently cutting off this piece we don't need. Right, with that cut off, we can assemble the engine halves together. So being a Tamiya kit, the fit is just absolutely perfect. No issues whatsoever. So we can just go right ahead with some Tamiya Extra Thin. It's actually my Tamiya Extra Thin plastic weld mix. There's a video on the channel. If you want to have a look at that, go back through and have a look. We can just glue the halves together. So obviously we cleaned it all up, got rid of all our sprue points. And it's a case of going around, gluing it all, and a little bit of a pinch to glue it together. And then leave it be for an hour or two before you paint is what I'd recommend to do. As you see, we've got all the other parts on the bench as well for the stage we want to do. We've got some really nice exhaust on this that we're going to add some really nice paint effects to, and then realise we're using the wrong ones and do it again. Anyway, so suspension in between the springs is normally an injection mould. So we cut most of it out with the knife, then sanded it with the UMP sanders to get rid of it. And then what we can do is get some of our Tamiya Extra Thin mix and glue in between the coils. Now, if you load the brush up and get a bit in there, it will start to melt and dissolve any seams or pieces of sprue that have been cut off, not quite flush. And you can just work your way through, just keep working at it, and get rid of the seams. You can do this on suspension, drive shafts, anything cylindrical that has a seam. Like I said, the drive shaft's exactly the same. Load the brush up, get some of the glue in the seams, watch your fingers, don't drop it. And just give it a minute or two to soften. And just brush, and you'll find it will get rid of the seam line. It's a very nice little trick that works really well. It definitely speeds up cleanup a little bit. We've got some resin parts to clean up as well for that box we cut off the top of the engine at the back. I think we've got like some ECUs, some sensors, and what have you to glue in place as well. And like I say, these are all going to need wiring up later. But for today, we're just going to get it all glued in place, primed, and painted. So UMP sanders again, brilliant for the bright resin, no problem whatsoever. And like I say, using the instructions which are on the bench, you can see the unit we're building. It's on the bottom right, both two boxes at the bottom. And we've got these little ECUs which are all numbered. Now I did look at the colours to see if they needed leaving off, and they're all the same colour basically. I think they're all silver, so I'm just going to glue them in place. And like I say, we'll paint them, weather them up later on, and yeah, they'll look good. So a little dab of glue where we cut the old one off, and just glue it in place. Make sure it's straight on all its different levels. Hold it in place. Now I've got some makeshift axles there, which are actually there for me to hold the engine when we spray it. And there we go. With that glued in place, we're ready to go. So Mr. Servicer 1500 black again. Iwata HPC H, or was it the plus? HPC H, I think it is. I always forget which airbrush this is. Couple of coats of the Mr. Servicer 1500 black, absolutely perfect. Like I say, these exhausts, I've not realised yet. There's two sets in the box, and I've got the wrong set here. We fully paint weather and everything, and then realise it's the wrong ones. Manifolds, obviously, they're the same. We've got lots of parts to paint, and as you can see on the right-hand side, I might have spilled a bit of paint, and I've wrote my name on my hand. That's so I don't forget who I am. I am Powell, apparently. Powell. Yes, there's a slight paint spillage on the bench, as you can see. We appear to have travelled forward or back in time here. Oh, no, we've added another paint spillage on the bench. Yes, this is Tamiya Pink Primer. I think it was freshly decanted in the bottle, and I shook the bottle, and it went everywhere. So, yep. There we go. Nice pink patch on the bench. So a couple of coats of the pink primer, because these are being sprayed red. Let it dry for a couple of hours. Same with the black primer as well. Then we can come back with some LP5 for all of these black bits. Just do them all in semi-gloss black. The engine cover, we've got some Mr. Hobby GX3, I believe it is, the red. Thinned about 60% with Mr. Hobby level and thinner. Several light coats building it up, and it gives us a nice glossy, really heavily pigmented red colour. Now, I did contemplate using a pro scale colour, and I thought, you know what, I've got this in the drawer, it'll save me gloss coating it later. It's perfect. So I use this. They are good, the Mr. Hobby GX colours. I think there's about 6 or 7 of them in the range. Very heavily pigmented. They look absolutely fantastic. Engine is being painted in Pro Scale Paint Bright Aluminium. For my Iwata Revolution CR3. That's what I use for all my metallics. As you can see, sprays on absolutely fantastic. Covers really quick. Very finely pigmented. Looks absolutely fantastic. Yep, I am proud of our metallic range. They do spray absolutely beautiful. Constantly adding to the range. I've got a light gunmetal to add to the range as well. So that's another colour. I think we're well over a dozen colours now, which is fantastic. As you can see, it just sprays beautiful. By the time you've got from one end to the other, it's dry and you can just put another coat down. Absolutely fantastic. Uses very little paint as well. There's very little paint coming out that airbrush. Very, very efficient and just looks absolutely stunning. So here we go. This is probably about the 3rd or 4th coat. We've got a beautifully painted engine. Very, very shiny. We'll get a wash on that later on, dull it down a little bit. And then onto our exhausts. We're doing these in Pro Scale Paints Titanium Silver. And like I say, these are the wrong ones. I didn't realise there was 2 different sets in the box till later on. But anyway, never mind. I did 2 loads of weathering. So you're going to see the wrong ones being painted and weathered and stained. And then I do the real ones off camera later. It's the same, exactly the same effect. It's just not the actual ones I was using. And here we go with the 2nd coat of the titanium. So laying down really well. Beautiful. The manifolds look really good as well. The coverage on our paints is absolutely phenomenal. As you see, there's hardly anything coming out of the airbrush. Very little spray. And yet the coverage is just phenomenal. Now, several components to mask up on the suspension. So we're going to mask up the spring and spray the very top of the suspension. So using a combination of Azu and Tamiya tapes, we're going to mask all this up. And drop it on the bench again. There we go, there's some Tamiya tape. And then we can clamp here, back into the booth some Mr. Hobby, sorry, for some Tamiya LP5 semi-gloss black. A couple of coats of this. Beautiful. Drive shafts are getting some Tamiya LP. I've got to remember the colour now. Is it 56? Rubber black. What colour is it? I always forget what colour it is. Rubber black. I forget now, but it's rubber black I'm spraying on there. And now we've got the long discontinued Alcalad hot metals. Now, I opted to try these. I don't often stain exhaust, but these are quite fancy exhausts. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to add some heat stain. And so I'm going to show you how to do it with the hot metals from Alcalad, which sadly you can no longer get. I have literally, in the past few days, this video is about 2 weeks old now. I have literally developed my own hot metal range, so they will be on the website by the time you see this video. So I've literally just tested it on my RX-7 exhaust. Worked really well. It's exactly the same principle here. We've got a violet colour, a blue colour, and a red colour. And we're just adding the heat stain into any areas of constriction or bends. That's it really. So working our way through the various shades and just adding staining as we go. Like I say, you can't get these anymore. I've had these for God knows how long now. Years and years and years. Like I say, I don't tend to weather exhaust very often on cars, but I think this one's got quite a special engine bay. And I thought, you know what, we'll weather it up. So there's our violet colour. Going down, very subtle. Then we can come with our red and then our blue as well, just testing the spray pattern. What we want to do is just go on the edge of the previous colour we did. We don't want to spray over it. We just want to kind of touch the edge so it looks like the heat dissipating through. Now, whether this is totally accurate, I have no idea. but I'm just doing it because it looked interesting. So don't criticize me for staying them wrong, or be like, oh, it doesn't do it, or that's the wrong exhaust, or imagine you'd be right about that one. I'm just doing it for looks, just to see how it'll look. And it turned out alright. Didn't turn out too bad at all. So it's a little bit tedious. Just take your time. You need good airbrush control, good finger control on your airbrush as well. You don't want to be spraying this too thick or heavy because you'll ruin the effect. And then I think this is the blue then. The final one is the blue. And we're just blending the colours together so you get like a continuation of one into the other. It's a bit difficult to do. Actually, this is the sepia colour. We've already done the blue. So this is like a brownish kind of paint. And I'm just kind of blending together. I didn't actually like the look of this too much. I think it took away from the effect a little bit. So my recommendation would be don't do this. Use your heat staining. And then as we're going to do in this last part, we're going to go over with the original Pro Scale Silver Titanium and blend the colours in. So they're not as obvious, but we can still see the heat staining. Like I say, there's a good half an hour's work there. We've done the same on the manifold as well. Added the heat stain to any bends or constriction. And this is the base colour now. And I'm just lightly misting over to blend it in so you can just about see the staining. And that's how I want it to look. You could leave it totally obvious if you wanted. For me, it's a little bit over the top. So I'm just blending in with the base colour. And like I say, I'll come back off camera and fix my mistake and paint the correct exhaust parts. But they're looking good. It adds a bit of interest to the model. Makes it look a little less monotone. This is probably the most important stage of this. I think you could ditch the sepia and just go straight to this and just blend in those tones. Blend it in until you can just about see the staining, and that's about right. And that's it. That's the end of part one. We'll be back with part two very, very soon, where we can continue and get all this put together and built up. And like I say, this is a mammoth project. It's going to take quite some time to do. So stick with us. They're not going to be released regularly. They're just going to be done as and when they are. They'll be built in between projects because it's such a big project, this one. So stay tuned. Like I say, keep an eye out for part two very soon. And as always, a huge thanks to all my patrons whose names are going to pop up at the end of this video. Take care, everyone.